brief history of the United States of America. Hi, boys and girls, ready to get started?
Oh no, here we go.
Once upon a time, there were these people in Europe called pilgrims, and they were afraid of being persecuted. So they all got in a boat and sailed to the New World where they wouldn't have to be scared ever again. Oh, I'm so relaxed. I feel so much safer. But as soon as they arrived, they were greeted by savages, and they got scared all over again. So they killed them all.
So the first argument against guns is that they were used in wars, because wars didn't exist before guns, and countries with gun control never go to war.
Now, you'd think wiping out a race of people would calm them down, but no. Instead, they started getting frightened of each other. Witch! So they burned witches.
So you're implying us gun advocates are scared for no reason. Well, we don't have guns because of witches. We have guns because of tyrannical government. But of course, such a thing can never come to the U.S. The U.S. is just special like that. But every time you say Trump, Democrats collectively all shit themselves, thinking he's the new Hitler.
1775, they started killing the British so they could be free.
They fought the British, a tyrannical monarchy, because they were forcefully taking their homes, their land, and taxing them into oblivion, like what the European Union still does today to their disarmed nations.
And it worked, but they still didn't feel safe. So they passed a Second Amendment which said every white man could keep his gun.
It's not like the Second Amendment wasn't considered until after the British left, but rather was a result of British tyranny, in which they implemented the amendment to prevent this kind of rise again, and so far, it's worked.
Loves my gun, loves my gun. Which brings us to the genius idea of slavery.
Oh, so slavery didn't exist until white people in the U.S. invented it. I'm learning so much.
You see, boys and girls, the white people back then were also afraid of doing any work. So they went to Africa, kidnapped thousands of black people, brought them back to America, and forced them to work very hard for no money.
No, if you actually open a history book, you know that all white people had to do to get slaves in Africa was to buy them. Blacks were warring and enslaving each other long before they had ever seen a white man.
And I don't mean no money like I work at Walmart and make no money.
And by making the concept of wage slavery seem ridiculous, you've made all the ANCOMs cry. I hope you're proud of yourselves. I'm proud of you.
I mean $0, nothing, not a zip. Doing it that way made the USA the richest country in the world.
The USA saw its economic growth after slavery was abolished, at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, not before. It was at this point that black people were paid to be productive members of society, rather than hard laborers.
So did having all that money and free help calm the white people down? No way. They got even more afraid. That's because after 200 years of slavery, the black people now outnumbered the white people in many parts of the South. Well, you can pretty much guess what came next. The slaves started rebelling. There were uprisings, and old master's heads got chopped off. And when white people heard of this, they were freaking out and going, I want to live. Don't kill me, big black man.
Okay, the Civil War. Wouldn't such an uprising have been more effective if the black people had firearms? Instead, 620,000, mostly white people, mind you, had to die in the Civil War for the black people's freedom. But sure, let's show the cute little slaves cut off the white people's heads.
Well, just in the nick of time came Samuel Colt, who in 1836 invented the first weapon ever that could be fired over and over without having to reload.
You know what? You're absolutely right. If you completely disregard the pepperbox gun, the Belton flintlock, the Puckle gun, which were all invented before the Second Amendment ever existed, and the Gatling gun, which was invented several years before the Colt revolver. I think the picture that they're trying to paint here is that if one group has guns and the other doesn't, that the group without guns gets oppressed, meaning only the government having guns is a completely retarded idea.
And all the Southern whites were like, yeah! But it was too late. The North soon won the Civil War and the slaves were freed.
620,000 lives, most of which were white, to free the slaves.
Yep, they were free now to go chop all the old masters' heads off. And everybody was like, oh no, we're gonna die. But the freed slaves took no revenge. They just wanted to live in peace.
Maybe the reason that they didn't get revenge had somewhat to do with the fact that their former masters owned firearms to protect themselves. So in this scenario, firearms de-escalated many attempted murders. Or perhaps they knew that not all white people are so bad, especially after seeing so many of them fight for their freedom in the Civil War.
But you couldn't convince the white people of this, so they formed the Ku Klux Klan. And in 1871, the same year the Klan became an illegal terrorist organization, another group was founded, the National Rifle Association.
Or it just so happens that the NRA was formed as a result of the Third Force Act, which allowed the government the legal grounds to suppress the KKK and encouraged citizens to fight the KKK. Just because the cure came around the same time as the disease doesn't mean it's a symptom.
Soon politicians passed one of the first gun laws, making it illegal for any black person to own one.
This precedent was passed in 1875 under U.S. versus Cruikshank, which actually had strong favoritism in the South, home to the KKK, and not by the northern citizens, which was strictly anti-KKK. But thanks to the shitty federal government regulations, this extended to black people everywhere. Furthermore, there's absolutely zero evidence that the NRA had anything to do with this precedent being passed, but rather was enacted by a group of judges.
It was a great year for America, the KKK and the NRA. Of course, they had nothing to do with each other, and this was just a coincidence. One group legally promoted responsible gun ownership, and the other group shot and lynched black people.
Again, zero evidence that these two working together instead of one being created to destroy the other.
And that's the way it was all the way to 1955, when a black woman broke the law by refusing to move to the back of the bus. White people just couldn't believe it. Huh? Why won't she move? What's going on? Man, all hell broke loose. Black people everywhere started demanding their rights, and white people had a major freaky fear meltdown, and they were all like, run away! Run away! And they did.
Again, why would they run if only they were allowed to have guns?
They all ran fleeing to the suburbs where it was all white and safe and clean. And they went out and bought 250 million guns and put locks on the doors, alarms in the houses, and gates around the neighborhoods. And finally, they were all safe and secure and snug as a bug.
Because black people aren't allowed to buy suburban homes, right? Or do they just choose not to? This video doesn't do much to demonize guns, but rather brings in racial matters. The creators promote finger pointing and demonstrates its own separation of blacks and whites, which is racist.
Lived happily ever after.
Well, that video was absolute bullshit.